Hey everyone, welcome to this week's modules. This is Dale, and let's start first by talking about Google, which we all probably have plenty of experience with Google, but I want to talk about how search works and how it plays a role with social and how social can help search. And then I'll show you some of the analytics that are going to be going along with this as well. And you'll get a lot more experience with analytics when we get to the in-person workshop. First, a very, very brief background of Google. It was founded by Sergey Brin there on the left and Larry Page in 1998. So, Google's coming up on its 20th birthday here in a couple years, which is, ancient in terms of technology terms. So, in reality, though, Google is not all that old, and the idea of search, especially how we view it today and how much of a role it plays in our lives, is really not all that old. So this is what the first Google page looked like. You can see, if you get rid of some of the clutter, it's still fairly similar to what we see today. And one thing I always talk with students, especially those who use Google, is why they use Google. And a couple of the reasons they'll usually say is, one, the results are really good. So that's what Google really wants to hear. But two, a lot of them really like that it's so clean and simple. These days, we don't get a lot of this in terms of user experience, especially from a major corporation. So the fact that Google has kept its homepage clutter-free and very easy and simple to use does play a role in terms of how many people use it. Google's mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. So, not a big deal, right? Just we want to organize all of the information in the world. Google also had a time where their logo or their motto was "Don't be evil." I don't know that time necessarily exists anymore, but that did play a role for quite a while. You may have noticed or heard the big news last year. Google actually reorganized as a company called Alphabet, and Google is now a part of Alphabet, which is a larger company, and all of the things involved in Alphabet. One is Google Fiber, which is available in South Austin now and moving to other cities like San Antonio. Health and life sciences is a big part, especially with Larry Page. He's been involved in a lot of health-related companies. I know they've been working on contact lenses in terms of helping diabetics know when their blood sugar is either spiking or dropping. Google Capital and Investments, obviously, Google has a ton of money, more money than we will ever know what to do with. Nest is a company that Google bought last year or in the past year or two, involving home electronics, so thermostats, smoke detectors, things along those lines. And then Google X is the moonshot company. These are the big picture things that Google wants to do, something maybe along the lines of space travel or something like that. But Google X is the big picture thing. Sundar Pichai is now the Google CEO. He's been getting pretty good reviews in terms of how he's been running Google itself, which again is the search-related company. And the Google lineup in terms of just Google itself, Android operating system is a big player, so any cell phone or smartphone using Android is involved in Google, the company. Google Search, YouTube is a part of Google. Apps, so if you use Gmail, that's a Google app. Spreadsheets, Docs, anything else along those lines. Google Maps, obviously a big player, and then the biggest one probably is right down there, which is Google Ads, which allows Google to make money off of its search and YouTube and all the other products that it has in the Google lineup. And we'll see how data plays a role with that as well. And then there's, unfortunately, our old pal Google+. So Google has failed quite a few times in terms of trying to create a social network to compete with Facebook and the like. Google+ is just the latest company or the latest platform for Google to go ahead and shut down or just kind of pretend doesn't exist anymore, joining the likes of Wave and Buzz and all the other failed Google social ventures. So for all the greatness involved with Google, social is one thing that Google has never been able to figure out. That's why a lot of people assume that Google will just eventually buy Twitter and be done with it, because for all the great smart minds working there, they've never been able to work out social. But don't cry for Google because they can't figure out social. It's okay for them. Quarter four of 2015, they still made $18 billion. So they're doing okay, even if they're failing at social. 25 or 75% of all search is done through Google, which might even seem a little low because Google is so much the dominant force when it comes to social. But Yahoo has about 10% of that reach. So Yahoo's still a player, not a huge player, but Yahoo is still around, very much a company in turmoil. Marissa Mayer, the former Google executive, is still, as of this moment, the CEO of Yahoo. There's been a lot of talk that she's going to be forced out of the company. In fact, a report just today said she would get $55 million if they go ahead and force her out. She kind of inherited a sinking ship and hasn't been able to turn it around. So, brilliant mind, but I don't know that Yahoo really knows what it is. So I'm not quite sure that has changed since she's come on board. But just a very brief little bit there about Yahoo. So let's talk about how search itself works. This is something really important for students to understand. I don't know that they truly get what happens when they type their keywords into Google. Yes, it might seem like magic that Google knows what to tell them, but there's a method to it, and it's important for us to know this so we can share it with students. So Google or any other type of search engine really has three major functions. One, it crawls and indexes the web, so we'll talk about that. Two, it provides answers. And three, hopefully if those first two work, then you'll keep coming back because the answers it provided by crawling and indexing the web were good. So that's Google's whole business plan right there. We use these to crawl and index the web, not these literally, but something called spiders, which are actually bots that are being used to crawl through every single site on the web. So Google uses links still as of this moment, although there's been a lot of talk about Google changing how it does this. As of right now, links still lead these bots or these spiders down the right path in order to find all of the pages and sites that are on the web and on the internet. Engines not only read the links, but they're also reading the code and the content in order to know where to go or where to point you when you ask certain things in the future. So this crawling and indexing of the web is how Google knows, okay, if this person is looking for Dallas Cowboys, I should probably recommend DallasCowboys.com first because it's already gone through and crawled that site. It knows the code behind it, and it knows based on a lot of the stuff that's in the code and the links that are constantly pointing to DallasCowboys.com that this is a popular site for content on the Dallas Cowboys. So that is the magic that happens in a split second in terms of how search works. And we really do, when we talk about time, it really is a split second. So Google takes that search that you make. So again, if I was searching for Dallas Cowboys, takes those two keywords and goes through billions and billions of files in less than a second. So if you stop and think about that for just a second, it's insane, amazing. Insert whatever you want to use here. The amount of work that these search engines do, all based on this, platform and getting us the right answer. Just think about how many times you search through Google, and most of the time it's finding you the right stuff that you're actually looking for, and it does that so quickly. And it's basing those results on its algorithm, which we just talked about. So two main factors with search that go into this, and we've already kind of touched on these, but the content on the page, so what you're writing about, what the content on the page itself actually says is going to be important. Also the code. So the HTML, the CSS, or whatever code you're using, or whatever language you're using, that's important because Google can read that code. Google, or the bots, aren't going to necessarily get sarcasm or understand the nuances of the language. But if you go into the code and you're giving the bots clues as to what that page is about or what that site is about, that will help. And then again, those links pointing to the page show a sense of popularity. So if a page has a lot of links pointing to it, that's a sign to Google that this page must be popular and must have a purpose as to why all these links are pointing to it. So real quickly, Google's goals, you might be able to guess these really quickly. There's two main ones. One is to give correct answers. So if it gives correct answers, you're going to keep coming back. And two, if it gives correct answers and people keep coming back, Google's going to make a lot of money. So those are really its two main goals. And as you saw, 18 billion just in Q4, Google does quite well with both of those answers. So here's how Google makes money. This is a really competitive keyword search that I'll just show you here. It's San Antonio air conditioning. As you imagine, in summertime, this is a really competitive keyword. And a couple of things to look for when you look at a search result page like this. One is paid versus organic. Okay, so let's go back to this. If you look up here, these are ads. So these are paid search. Companies are paying to be up above the map on this. And this was ads as well. Google just recently did away with the side ads. But all of this is paid search results. Right here are the organic search results, meaning the sites that Google actually thinks you would be looking for. These are going to show up no matter what because people have bid on these placements. But these are all part of the algorithm where Google is actually reading the code, reading the links, all of that, and coming up with its algorithm for what it thinks to be the best sites. Here's why these are important. Those paid search results up here, if somebody clicks on any one of these paid search results for this keyword, since it's so competitive, it's usually about $45 or $50 per click. That's how Google makes its money. Now, obviously, most keywords are not this competitive, but there are some that are even more competitive. So like a plastic surgery keyword search might cost anywhere to a couple $100 per click. So when I talk with students about which one would you rather have, would you rather have the paid advantage here, or would you rather organically be in the Google results? How many times do you even look at the paid spots here? I know my eye is just automatically trained to zone them out. They're obviously effective, though, because Google's making a lot of money with this. But obviously, you'd want the organic results to be higher than having to pay. Now, some companies do both, and that's fine. But when you have to choose between organic and paid, you would obviously rather be high on the organic side than high on the paid side. And that's where SEO really comes into play. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. And SEO involves a lot of things. I'm going to just briefly go over a couple of these things. Content comes into play, links, proper sitemaps and coding, tags, keywords, social, video. We could go on and on and on for the things that go into SEO and how we do this. But really, the job of an SEO company or an SEO client or an SEO analyst is to try and game, might be a strong word, but try and figure out the algorithm and help a client get higher results in search on what they can possibly do to help with that. So again, we mentioned a couple things. Links. Can you get your client more links? Content. Can you write better content? Can you freshen up the code on the site? Can you make sure the code's correct? These are all signs to Google that will help strengthen your search results. There are black hat SEO people, which means they will do anything, whether it's spammy or against Google's rules, which aren't technically rules, but they're Google's own guidelines. Black hat, very frowned upon. It can really hurt a company. It might have really strong results in the very short term, but in the long term, it's really going to hurt a company because Google tends to penalize companies that do these black hat tactics, especially spammy companies, to game the algorithm, and they end up falling off the maps or they get taken off the results altogether. So black hat, really dangerous. Then there's white hat SEO, which these are people or analysts or SEO specialists who go completely by Google's guidelines. These are pretty few and far between. A lot of companies are white hat-ish, meaning they try to stick to them as much as possible, but they occasionally do a few things. And really, those are kind of gray hat. which the majority of SEO companies are probably in this gray hat realm where they do mostly right by Google because you don't want to offend Google. You don't want to break any of Google's rules and hurt your clients. But there are a few things that you can do that may not necessarily be the strongest in terms of Google's eyes, but it does work. And so, like I said, a lot of these SEO companies are actually more gray hat than anything else. Any black hat SEO companies you would want to run away from for all of your speed and might. The reason why that's important is because Google's constantly working on its algorithm. So those black hat SEO companies who are doing anything spammy to get results improved, Google's going to find that, and it's going to change the algorithm, and then clients are going to end up being penalized to do that. So Google's constantly working on its algorithm. It usually issues an update every year or 6 months to a year. So what's the future of SEO? SEO is changing a lot. In fact, just the word SEO is kind of a dirty term in a lot of eyes. So we really call it online marketing. Branding is playing a huge role. That's where social comes into play. So if you can use all the data that you get from Google in order to increase your social presence and then also drive people to your site or drive people to your ads or drive people to your branding through social, there's a really unique relationship between the role of social media and SEO that can play a huge role. Reviews, getting good reviews, obviously very important when it comes to branding. It's also important in terms of search. Going through citations, so going through all these directories where you can put your name and address and phone number and website. These are all important things in the role of SEO. Content marketing is huge right now. I've mentioned in past modules, I have 4 interns every semester who they do nothing but write articles and keyword-specific blogs or infographics. So we talked about the importance of good content. That is probably not going away anytime soon, and Google's really valuing quality content. And then user experience, especially in mobile. If you don't have a mobile site or a mobile website, you're going to be in trouble in terms of Google because you have to realize that most people are viewing the web these days on their phone. So we have to put that effort into mobile when it comes to it. Doesn't mean the desktop version or the laptop version of a site is not important. Of course it is. But we tend to put like 95% of the worry into that, and we think of mobile as the afterthought when it should probably actually be the other way around. We should be really building specifically for mobile, especially for certain businesses where the majority of their customers are coming from mobile. And you can find that via your Google Analytics, which we'll talk about right now. So Google provides by far the most analytics of any network that we'll talk about here. And I want to show you just a few of them. There are a couple things you have to do in order to get some Google Analytics from your sites. And I'll have John walk us through Google Analytics in the in-person workshop. But the first thing you have to do is sign your site up through Google. That's easy enough. We have to enter a tracking code into the code on our site. And then you get to learn about your audience. So that's really cool. Here's some of the examples that you get through Google Analytics. And again, we'll go through these in much greater terms. But you can get page views. You can get time on the page. So if people are coming to your site, but they're only staying like 20 or 30 seconds, that's probably not a good sign, right? Bounce rate is really important. Bounce rate are people who come and instantly leave. So that usually means maybe something spammy is happening, or your ad just isn't working, or your site's really ugly, things along those lines. So bounce rate, something that we pay attention to greatly. You can also see over here, you can break it down between hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly when it comes to that. You can also find out where people are going on your site. So you can look at all your traffic. This slash means the homepage here. So the homepage is probably always going to be the most popular page on your site. And then you have other pages on your site. This would continue to go on. There's other information over here that I'm hiding for client confidentiality purposes, but you get a ton of information about the page itself or the pages that people are visiting. You get goals and completions. So you set up what a conversion means. So a conversion could be anything from a phone call to a form submission to a survey taken to an email submission. It could be a lot of different things. You put a value on those conversions, and then it starts to track how many of those are actually happening. And now you're starting to show your worth, right? So you can say, hey, well, we brought in $10,000 worth of business this month based off of these 90 goals. You can also see them in this term. So you set up all the goals, and then it'll show you how many you did and what the percentage of those completions were of those specific goals. You can also see what browsers people are using. So this is important for a couple of reasons. One, you need to know if you design your site and it works in every browser but Internet Explorer, and you're still getting 10% of your traffic from Internet Explorer, that's a problem. Which is a lot of the things that what we tend to do when we build new sites. So the other thing to keep in mind is if Safari is very high on your list of browsers, that is probably mobile. So you need to know that it's working in there or in the Android browser as you see there. But important information to have. Also important to know where your users or where your visitors are coming from. So if you're a San Antonio or an Austin company, and you can see Moscow and St. Petersburg there, there's something going on, right? So why are we getting clicks from New York? Why are we getting clicks from Russia? That is something you might want to look into and figure out what's going on. Did you hire someone from Moscow to build a part of the site? That would help. That would explain it. Do you have a marketing firm in New York City? That would explain why you're getting some clicks there. But you want to know this information. And obviously, if you're based in San Antonio, you would want San Antonio to be number one in terms of where your users are coming from. Here's another hint in terms of mobile versus desktop or laptop. Knowing the operating system that someone's using. So you can see here iOS, that means an iPhone. So 24% of this particular client's traffic is coming from iPhone, and then Android is next at 13%. So altogether, 37% of traffic is coming from a phone. So you can see why that's obviously very important. And then here's how people are coming to the site. So organic search would mean they went to Google and typed in a certain keyword, and organically that result popped up. You would want that number to be very high. That means you're doing a good job in terms of Google's eyes. Referral would mean an ad of some sort. Direct means they actually just typed in your URL and went to it that way. And then social would be people coming to your site via social, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, you name it. If you run a social account, so as our students begin to do this, having this knowledge and being able to point of, hey, I led 85 people to the website this month who then had 4 conversions based on that. That's how you start to prove yourself in terms of an ROI. Now, this is a very inexact science. There are a lot of times where someone might come to the site via social and then go away for a while and then come back later via direct because they now know the company name and they remember the URL. And if they get a conversion that way, it's not going to go down as social. So I'm not trying to paint this picture as the exact way of figuring out your worth or your value to a client, but it can help you in the right direction in terms of being able to justify whatever they're paying you to be part of the social team. Okay, so that's the first video in this module. Up next, we're going to dive more into data and talk a little bit about data mining and how data can help with not just social content, but also pointing your social strategy in the right direction.